Welcome to episode 338 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Joining me in a moment is Phil Reid. Phil is Managing Director at Varamus, and Varamus is the company setting up a network of electric trains transporting parcels overnight around the UK. And we're going to talk about how it all started and the new expansion plans that you might have read about recently, installing a new service between London and Scotland, transporting parcels overnight. Well, let's get into it. Phil Reid, Managing Director at Varamus. Joining me on the line is Phil Reid. Phil is the Managing Director of Varamus. And Phil, we're going to be talking about trains and overnight transport and things like that. Why don't you start by sharing a bit of the story behind the company, what you're doing, how you got the idea, and where you're operating.
I'm a train driver. My background is in train driving in the UK. I've worked at a number of different companies, worked abroad in Taiwan for 18 months as well, back in 2008, 2009. And a number of years ago, I was moving some redundant stock out of service on the Greater Anglian, the stock that we're using at the moment, the Class 321 trains, high-speed passenger trains that can reach 100 miles an hour. And they were being cascaded out of service for new rolling stock, which was probably more purposeful for modern-day commuters and travellers around the Greater Anglian region. I felt these trains still had some sort of life span left in them yet. So the idea was very much just taking the seats and tables out of the train and replacing people with parcels. It's a very simple concept. I didn't want to overcomplicate anything. We get a train, we get some train paths with Network Rail, and then I drive it myself. It was a very simple concept to go. And as you can probably understand, there's a lot of regulatory obligations that we have to meet and criteria that we have to abide by. And we started on the journey then. Varamus Rail was born, and we started making plans to acquire some trains, develop the idea a bit more to make it more realistic. And we started working towards gaining our train operating licence, safety certificates to enable Varamus Rail to run its own express rail parcel service around the UK. The initial plans were to connect the middle of England with Scotland. That was always the idea. But then it became very apparent that, most of the flows in the UK for logistics do go up the west coast of the country where, most of the population lives, and that's where the flows generally go. So we changed our plans. There's been a lot of learning that's been done over the last 3-4 years to be able to offer a service that's suitable for the customers that are going to use it, because there's no use in us in the railway trying to tell people how to do things. And, it's all about the customer at the end of the day, and that was always the case. And so we changed our sort of initial proof of concept to go between Birmingham and Glasgow 5 nights a week. We gained our train operating licence in September 2022, and we started our proof of concept between Birmingham and Moss End near Glasgow in October 2022. And it was just about, going out there and proving what the railway can do, proving the trains can meet the demands of the logistics sector. And to be honest, we had a great service. We had our first in kind train. It took quite a while to build the right team around what we were doing. It wasn't just me. So even though the vision many years ago was for me to drive that first train, I built up a strong team of operational people in Scotland and around the UK to support our operations going forward.
Now, Phil, I want to get to the Birmingham to Glasgow service that you launched, because it's still running, as I understand it. Yep. But you mentioned a couple of technical things here I just want to ask you about, first of all. One was you're talking about, was it train paths? And the other thing you talked about was the speed of the train compared to, say, a traditional freight train. That was something that came up when we spoke with Titus Butler from Swiss Post a few weeks ago. Can you just elaborate that on just a little bit? What do you mean by train paths, and why is the speed of the train an important thing when it comes to moving parcels around, as opposed to, say, whatever might be a traditional rail freight, goods that carried on rail freight? I'm getting my words mixed up, everybody, but don't worry, Phil knows what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, sorry, the technicalities of the railway. So train paths are the slots that we get within the national working timetable that Network Rail work very hard to produce twice a year. And these are the train times, in essence, that we can run during the day or night on the UK rail network. So at the moment, we have train paths that leave Moss End near Glasgow at 5:30 in the afternoon. They arrive into Birmingham at 10 p.m. and then we leave Birmingham at midnight, and we get back into Moss End at around about 4 a.m. in the morning. So that's what the train paths are. They're the train times that enable us to run our trains on the UK rail network. There's a lot of work that goes into train planning, much more than I ever thought. It was very important for me to work with Network Rail to get these train slots in the national timetable, because I wanted to offer our customers confidence that our service would run not just on one night or 2 nights, on 3 nights, but we could give them confidence that we had the right train slots in the timetable that suited them 5 nights a week all year round. And that's what we did. It was very important that we could do that. So it's no use just running a one-off trial and then it ends, because the customers want it to continue. And so that's what we did. We worked over a number of months with Network Rail, found the right train slots in the timetable, and eventually we were offered them by Network Rail, and we continue to use them to this day. When we started looking at, and this was always one of my aspirations, with using a 100-mile-an-hour freight train, it can travel at speeds akin to those as passenger train services. So when we started to look at the working timetable, as it's known in the UK with Network Rail, our train service can integrate within spaces in the timetable of that with train passenger services. Whereas traditional freight, the maximum speeds are maybe 60, 70 miles an hour, faster passenger services can catch them up, and they will generally get looped or held at locations for the passenger trains to be able to overtake them and not lose any time or momentum in that passenger network. We're able to integrate our service within the passenger train operating services that are out there in the UK. So it's that speed of the train that really enabled us to find, we'll say, spare capacity within the timetable, because it is very constrained. There's a lot of trains planned on the UK rail network every year, but we were really confident that we could find space for this particular high-speed freight service through the very nature of the high speed of our trains.
Now let's talk about the Birmingham to Glasgow service from a practical perspective now. I mean, people listening to this, we all work in the delivery and the logistics world. We want to know how it works. So in practice, you've mentioned that you've got the train paths, you've mentioned how fast the trains can run, but I imagine you're not necessarily just running in and out of passenger railway stations. So how are you loading the consignments onto and off the trains, and how are you then integrated with sort of the broader logistics network in that sense?
Well, I've got a surprise for you there, Ian. We actually run into a passenger train station in Birmingham. So our Birmingham hub is actually Birmingham International Railway Station, and it used to be a Red Star Parcels facility. So I don't need to start talking to you about the post office and how they used to do this many years ago. We're not reinventing the wheel here. This was done many years ago and was stopped for a multitude of reasons. But we like to believe that because parcel volume has increased exponentially since the pandemic and over a number of years now, that we totally get that the demand for recreating this service is there, and we believe in it in its entirety. What we've tried to deliver is a high-speed rail service between 2 locations. So for the last 18 months, we've been running between Birmingham and Glasgow, and we do that very quickly, as I've mentioned before, in 4 hours. What's really important to us then is that we don't make that sort of handling process at either end sort of slow and lumbersome. We need to make sure that the handling at each end is quick, it's efficient, and we've used roll cages since we started, because we believe that these sort of containers that we can move can be done efficiently, quickly, and it doesn't sort of impact on the overall time of delivering goods between 2 locations like Birmingham and Glasgow. So Moss End Yard in Glasgow is slightly different. That was a bespoke platform that was built for parcels maybe nearly 30 years ago. And that's a straight level loading cross dock between the train and the road vehicles, the last mile road vehicles that we need to use to make them deliveries to the final customer. That's about 8 meters wide, so it's very efficient anyway. But Birmingham International is slightly more challenging in that there's a corridor of around about 70, 80 meters that we have to move these goods. And the quickest way at the moment we have been able to find to move these goods is in road containers, and we get it. It's road-based transport solutions of usually adapted pallets, to move their goods around because they're easily produced, they're readily available. But we had to create an efficient process at either end of our rail operation to make sure that the timings that we're trying to achieve between two locations are not impacted by that sort of additional loading at each end. The railway can only take the goods to a certain location, and we can't obviously take it to someone's front door or someone's factory maybe. There's always going to be that sort of last mile delivery solution that we're looking for. And something I've always promoted and something I continue to promote is, work with us, because we'd like to think that we can do the trunk mileage, the line haul element of goods distribution with a fully electric train. And we'd love that electric train then to be supported by sustainable regionalised transport solutions like e-vans, like cargo bikes in towns and cities, whatever that sustainable last mile delivery solution is.
It's always interesting to talk about this context of rail being used as a sustainable solution, but also as an efficient solution, because we're under price pressure in this sector, let's be brutally honest. And we're seeing Deutsche Post in Germany, we're seeing Swiss Post in Switzerland move towards more parcels being carried by rail. So it'll be interesting to see if that trend extends to other countries. So we mentioned environment, and there are things like it's not just about emissions, it's also about noise pollution and things like that. So can you tell us about some of the advantages that rail can offer compared to a road-based line haul solution?
Our service, can offer speed benefits, as we've said, 4 hours between Birmingham and Glasgow, and we're pretty impressed with the performance of both the train and the network to achieve that. On cost, we've done a lot of financial modelling that tells us that we're competitive in this market now against road, especially over the line haul element. So your 200, 300, 400 miles of haulage. We're not really impacted so much by fuel charges, and there's obviously there's been a well documented driver shortage in the road industry over a number of years now. And one of our trains, an 8-car train, for example, could potentially remove 10 to 12 standard size HGVs off the road. And along with that, you've then got one train driver that could take a load up that would usually require maybe 10 to 12 lorry drivers at the same time to make them movements north. And what we've been able to find out over time is that, it's very difficult for one lorry driver to be able to deliver between such distances as Birmingham and Glasgow. So what usually happens is that these companies meet in the, they get their drivers to meet in the middle and be able to return the same night. There's social implications for drivers. All our drivers get back every night. They have a very attractive, work environment that they work within.
So tell us a bit about the clean air aspect of this, because obviously this is a huge focus for a lot of governments around the world, and the delivery sector is having to respond to this. So what can you share with us on that front?
Part of our strategy to move parcels around the UK, as well as between two hubs that we've got that have been built for high volumes of parcels, is getting into towns and cities, and as well as the CO2 benefits that we can offer. One 4-car train 5 nights a week in a year can remove nearly 1,500 tons of carbon from a business's operations. We can also promote clean air strategies and in towns and cities local to everyone around the UK.
Let's move now towards the exciting news from your end, which is that you'll soon be launching a London to Glasgow service. What have you learnt from the service that you've been running between Birmingham and Glasgow that you'll be implementing as part of this new launch, the new service between London and Glasgow?
Well, yeah, we're really excited by the plans that we're currently making to get into central London from the middle of March. We're working with a number of clients at the moment to make sure that what we deliver is fit for them. So again, when we talk about train slots in the timetable, and we just want to make sure that what we create is purposeful for them. The Glasgow to London element is really critical for us because we believe there's a lot of volume that can come down from Scotland and the Midlands right into the very heart of London. And then this is just, one of many cities around the UK that this service could really go into the heart of. And we're excited by, we've got a number of trains now that have been modified for this service, and we're excited to be going into London from the middle of March. And we work with our clients, we work with them to make sure that what we're developing between us is a collaboration and partnership, really, to make sure that our service offering is totally suited to their needs. And central London, being as densely populated as it is a really key target for us to move goods into.
So we've got the London-Glasgow service coming up very soon. What's next after that? You said that there's plenty of rail routes around the UK and plenty of decent-sized cities. So what's next?
Well, we've got huge aspirations to go up the East Coast rail corridor in the UK. So we're developing train slots at the moment that go from London via Doncaster, Newcastle, up to Scotland, up to Edinburgh. The West Country down to Bristol and South Wales is a really exciting opportunity for us, we believe. And the Anglian regions. If it's electrified, Ian, we want to go there. So there's big aspirations in the future to be able to offer this service to many regions around the UK.
Phil, if people want to find out more about the Veramis service and about the electric trains and what you're doing, who should they contact? Where should they go?
It's quite easy. We're very active on all social media platforms. Obviously, the first point of call is our website, www.varamis.co.uk. They can also email us at logistics@varamis.co.uk. And hook up with us on LinkedIn. There's plenty of information out there for people to go to, find out more about what we've done, what we continue to do, and obviously our aspirations to grow in the next couple of years.
So if you want to find out more about the Varamis service and what they're doing there, go to the website. I'll put a link on thepostalhub.com to the Varamis website and to their LinkedIn profile, and so you can find out more about what they're doing. And, well, if you want to partner with them or send parcels via them, well, I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear more about it. Phil Reid, Managing Director at Varamis, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
Thank you, Ian. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been really great talking to you. Thank you.
Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Rob King from cargo bike firm Zedify returns, and he's going to be, well, I'm not going to tell you what he's going to talk to us about. It's top secret. Well, it's not really, but, I want to have a little bit of mystery about all of this. Make sure you don't miss any of these episodes. Subscribe to the podcast on your favourite podcast platform, be it Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. Please do subscribe to my weekly email newsletter that comes out with every episode. There's also the Daily Delivery Digest, if you're interested in that sort of thing, a daily email with all the headlines from around the delivery world. And there's also my Post Office Digest, for those of you that like post office stuff. You can follow me and indeed the Postal Hub on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, but who cares? I don't know. Tell me if you do. I doubt that you will, even if you do. Anyway, if you want to email me at ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.